thank you for joining us today as we are beginning the online sessions for our mental health journey, which is an initiative by the Global Shapers Algiers Hub, through which we are exploring mental health from different perspectives and contexts, as you have already seen with Fatma and Bilal. So we're starting today with a topic that is both extremely important but also deeply personal to all of us. But unfortunately, this topic is still often overlooked and we don't talk about it enough, which is mental health in North Africa. So now it's the time for us to come together as a region to create the space where we can openly address this topic and discuss the realities of mental health in our context. And that's what we are doing tonight. So I'm very delighted to be here with you all. So in this session, we will talk about the current state of mental health in North Africa in general, the key challenges and barriers that people are facing, and then the solutions that can help us move forward and improve the situation. So thank you again all, and a special thank you for our amazing speakers for their kindness and the valuable contributions they will have. And I'd like to invite you now, each one of you, to introduce yourselves, please.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Rim Raudi. I am a practitioner in art therapy, a life coach, and in meditation. And my journey with mental health is basically so I'm like literally your stereotypical person who went into the job market, had a major burnout, and then decided, oh my God, how come we don't teach? We were never taught how to deal with our emotions, who we are, and everything. So this has become my life's mission to support other people getting to know themselves, especially through art. So this is, and thank you very much, Yusra, Rayan, and Iman for the invitation, and thank you to the Algiers Hub for starting this conversation that I think is actually a very important one to have.
Thank you, Rim. Fatma,
Hey
Bilal?
there, everyone. Sure. Hey there, everyone. My name is Bilal Hamd Ali. I'm a psychologist and I'm Algerian. I'm happy to be here among you all. I'm actually, I have a bachelor's in clinical psychology and a master's in health psychology. I started working in the field of psychology as a therapist. I have like now 1 to 2 years of experience, and I'm happy to be here and to have like experts like Reem and Fatima to learn more with them. And thank you for the Shapers to have invited me here.
Hi everyone, I am Fatima Gadira. I'm calling in from Tunis and super excited to be here. This is for me like the coming together of three lands that are very dear to my heart and that I wish to see like more united. So this feels like a first, too many, inshallah. My career started in the mental health space in psychology more than 10 years ago. I worked in psychiatric hospitals, in prisons, in juvenile halls, and even in autopsies. And then I went onto a completely different route in psychology, which is more of like discovering the human potential, leadership development, finding our gifts as the stewards we are of this earth, and showing up as the best way that we can. And I do that in different ways through sound therapy, through retreat hosting, and retreat design as well, and through other artistic ways of expression too. I love bringing community together. For me, that's the way we heal, and that's especially the way we heal in North Africa, I think. And I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Amazing. Thank you, the three of you. So now we can start with our extremely interesting talk. We will start by talking about the current state of psychology in North Africa. And of course, the first question will be, what is the current state of mental health in North Africa and what are the biggest challenges people are facing here? So the floor is yours.
Okay, I'll go first. I think there is so much things to upload when it comes to psychology in Algeria. I think we've done so much progress. Like we see today that people are more willing to express their emotions and to seek help when needed, something that maybe our parents or grandparents weren't doing that. And I think it has like there is so many factors that nowadays are an advantage for us, like social media, who are trying to normalize psychology by using like videos, sharing content, and it's something very important. So that's the first thing I would talk about. I think today the good thing we could talk about is that we're using a more holistic model in psychology today. We use the PBS, so psychological, biological, and sociological. So three factors. We take the three individual factors, which are the psychology of the person, how he can regulate his emotions and cognitive functions. We have the sociological, meaning he needs to be contained by the family, friends, and the community. And the biological factor, which now we know that there is many disorders that could come, like anxiety. It could have reactions like bodily reactions, somatic reactions. Now I think there is more professionals that are inclined more into evidence-based treatments, and this is good. I think we are doing so much improvement, but saying that there is progress, meaning every step forward reveals a path, like a long path of progress that we should go on and make. And today, I think this event, like what we're doing today, is one of the things that are trying to normalize psychology and mental health in North Africa.
It is definitely, there's a difference between today and a few years ago, that's for sure. At the same time, I do still see the challenges. I'm like a little bit more doomsday kind of person when it comes to psychology, because I saw in the West like the opportunities that there are, that I think here, because of our social barriers and the way we are about like needing to take care of self, there's, for me, like the biggest challenge is honestly like the culture of, like, for example, simple things as putting boundaries between each other, because we're such a collectivist culture. Like even saying to like family member, you cannot just show up and knock on my door, you know. I feel like those are the barriers that we don't have many opportunities to actually go and learn how to communicate like boundaries, how to stand, how, what is self-care, how is it like we can be in a communal kind of culture but also still take care of ourselves. Like understanding that between the individualism and the collectivism there is a balance that we could hold, and that we could hold the whole, which is the community, and also ourselves. And I really think that's actually what drives a lot of mental health issues, and at least in Tunisia, from what I'm seeing. And the other thing I would say is that I think is the product of colonization, is the fact that most of the modalities we have is like one-on-one versus like one-on groups. At least in Tunisia, that's like just something like facilitating a group coming together and having group therapy and talking about things is not like what you find usually when you have a mental health issue. You just go to a therapist, and that's awesome, and that is needed, and that is one of the tools, but that is not the only tool, because that reinforces the idea of individualism that came after colonization, and doesn't also like embrace the communal aspect that we were talking about Bilal earlier. Those are like the ones that come top of mind for me right now.
Okay, I think I'm gonna take it from a completely different perspective, because like for me, when we talk about mental health in our region, especially if I talk like for example about Morocco, we have almost 50% of the population that suffers from a form of depression or anxiety. So that's like
Yeah.
48. I think the official stat is like 48.9, which is a lot already. And those are the people that that have in a way or another gone already to a therapist. So like those are just the people that reached out for help. So I think when it comes actually to, let's talk about the people and then we can talk about like the therapy sphere. When we talk about
Mhm.
people, I think that there is a little bit more understanding, probably due to social media, as Bilal said, and Fatma, because of the discussion. We already opened the discussion, and I think that it has reached a threshold where you cannot deny it anymore. Um, I think individualism has a part to play in it. I think that our life, current quote unquote modern life, has a role to play in it. And I would almost challenge us to say that maybe it is healthy to have some form of mental health issue right now, condition, uh, seeing the stress and the crazy life that we are having. Seriously, we work more hours than our parents and our predecessors. We have less community time. We are not as communicative as they were. We have less hours of sleep. These are, like, statistically speaking, this is the reality in which we live. So it's almost like a healthy answer to be a little bit imbalanced, because because we have gone out of balance. So that was like the first part. The second part is that I see a lot of, so for example, I'll talk still about Morocco. It is very difficult now to access the psychology path, just because there are so many people who are interested in it. And that for
Mm,
me translates an understanding, maybe from the young generations, of the importance of having therapists and psychologists. But it also brings with it systemic challenges, like how do we make sure that these therapists are ready to take care of other people? One of the things that we have spoken about with the team is that, for example, for us today, a therapist is not obliged to go through therapy himself or herself before they start, um,
mhm,
accompanying other people. So there is a certain level of having to clean your own self before being able
mhm,
to actually and to remain objective in being with those other people. So I think we do have some sort of systemic issues that need also to be addressed. I talked
mhm.
about coaching. So, for example, in coaching, there is a deontology that is not enforced by law. So it's really up to the person whether they want to observe it or not. Or when it
Mhm.
comes to other areas, like, for example, like other forms of therapy that are maybe less conventional or like less structured, that also need some regulation, because the the it's a slippery slope, and if you don't regulate that, you leave room for people to go into harmful paths, which kind of beats the purpose of finding the right kind of seeking the right kind of help, let's call it that. So if I'm going to talk about Morocco very briefly, I think there is like more awareness. It does not necessarily translate into people actually seeking help, first because it costs a lot of money and it's not reimbursed,
Mhm.
especially for like psychotherapy, and second because there's still stigma, whether we want it or not, around mental health.
Yeah, of
Yes,
course.
there is a lot of advancement, but I think there's still stigma.
There's still stigma for
Totally,
sure.
totally. Yes, I actually have some people who come to, like, when I share videos on social media. Since we're a collectivist society, they tend to open a new profile without their name, without their picture, and send you a text
Mhm.
telling you, "Oh, I feel this and that and that. Can you please tell me if it's
Oh.
normal?" So people are afraid to come out and say that they have mental disorders, to come out and say they have anxiety or they have distorted thoughts. This kind of ideas come from this. I think the collectivist society has some benefits, but they have also like a cost, which is we can't take off our person without thinking of the other people. Like
Mhm.
our definition of our personality is based on social norms. And this is very, very, very interesting to talk about, because I think we have a certain a personality, this, I don't know how to call that, but un problème de personnalité, a personality problem, which
Identity.
comes
That's an identity
identity
issue.
crisis. Totally, yes, an
Yeah.
identity crisis that comes from the history of North Africa.
Yeah. Big one. Big time. Big time. And I was
Exactly.
hoping that we could actually bring this up because I really feel like that's where everything starts. And we had an opening in the revolution to actually have the government look at that from really systemic view. Because like we have the Amazigh, guys, we have the Amazigh roots that we are completely disconnected from, and they still exist, and we still exist. We could still feel it in the body. But after colonization, it's as if nothing existed. And that is disturbing, to be honest. Like I had to reflect on my identity a lot, especially because I had to also leave this land and go to another land to reflect on what is happening within me and how people perceive me and how people perceive the fact that I'm African in the Western world, you know? And to just like come back and be like, who are we actually? We had so much history. And then after colonization, so much had changed, and had been affected. Like our cultural structure has been affected by colonization. Just when you look at our homes, like the modernism in them, and then you see some more like identity kind of homes, and you're like, which one are we? You know? And I really think the identity crisis had such an opening at one point for us to like just ravel with the roots that have been taken away and to just like claim them back. And that's why I'm so excited about this meeting, because I do feel in a way by just us talking about it and resurfacing it, because I really think that's where the mental health issues also come from. It's like when you see, for example, the Black community in the United States, a lot of their mental health stuff are coming from the fact that they're disconnected from their roots and they don't know where they're coming from, you know? They don't know where they belong. And I really sometimes feel that even on this land, as I'm like, you know, which part am I actually? I'm really curious if you both also feel the same. And you too, Yusra.
I think we absolutely do. At least I'll talk for myself. I absolutely do believe that. Um, and I'm very happy that there is an awakening, I feel, amongst the young generations about what happened. Because you talked about identity, but I would also like to raise the generational trauma, the
Yes.
issue, like our grandparents, our parents, um didn't talk about this. They just kind of put it somewhere in their heads, and then they never brought it up. And recently I was talking to a friend, and then suddenly dawned on me that my father, God rest his soul, grew up during colonization. So he never ever spoke of his childhood. He spoke of his youth. He spoke of a lot of things about his young years, never ever about his youth. And I remember one day I just asked him, like, you never speak about it. How was it? And he was like, what do you think? How do you think it was? That was the only answer I ever got. So
Wow.
there's like this kind of, I don't know how to call it. C'est de la pudeur, maybe. It's like being a bit shy, maybe, to
Shy,
show
and there's shame also
emotions.
maybe in it too.
There's definitely, I think, a shameful part in it, which still to this day in many countries in the global south translate as this complex of inferiority that we have, always asking for the other's perspective instead of asking ourselves, like, what is my perspective, what do I think is best? And that maybe Algerians are the most qualified to think about Algeria, and Tunisians are the most qualified to talk about Tunisia, and Moroccans are the most qualified to talk about Morocco.
Amen to that.
Like those kinds of like ideas that are still very much present, that I am not enough. And
Mm-hmm.
it stems from, I think, years and years of first being belittled, and it's again, I want to be very mindful not to play the blame game. I am not blaming anyone. I think those are like just historic facts. Things happened. This is life. But it is our responsibility to reclaim our identity and to reclaim our strength as communities. So that's where I definitely think it has impacted us.
I'm with you 100%. I think, and to go back to Carl Jung, he said that until you make the unconscious conscious, you would never be free of your history. You would never be free of your actions. And when we go back to history and we see how much the colonial project inflicted a certain ideology,
Yes.
we have certain psychiatrists who, like Parot, I think his name was, who said that the indigenous North African is between primitive people and between Occidental white men. So, and they went as far as saying that the indigenous people don't have a developed frontal lobe. So these ideas gave a certain image on the indigenous North African. They were thinking about him in a certain way where he's a lesser human being, and all his problems come from this kind of concept that Frantz Fanon talked about, which is the North African syndrome, which people like colonialism used this to justify their presence here in Algeria.
Can you talk more about that? I'm really interested in hearing more about the North African syndrome. I never heard about that.
Actually, it was in one of Les Écritures de Frantz Fanon, and he talked about it also in The Wretched of the Earth, Les Damnés de la Terre, in his book, where he said that French colonial psychiatrists used this kind of notion or term, the North African syndrome, to justify their presence here, in saying that when a North African comes to the psychiatry aisle, he comes with a certain problem, but at that time there was the medical model, so there's no lesion, there's no neurological lesion to the problems he comes with, to his demands. And when they see that this person comes with this kind of symptoms, they say it's just the North African syndrome. It's just because they are lesser people, so they imagine their problems, they imagine their suffering.
Oh my God.
Yes, it was a colonial project, a kind of way to
They
justify their
invented
presence.
a disorder?
Yes, they
Wow.
literally were saying that the
I
North
mean,
African indigenous person has an underdeveloped frontal lobe. So the frontal lobe is the part of the brain which takes thinking, planning, and higher cognitive functions.
isn't it funny that we have the same almost, kind of term hysteria for women? Only women
Yes,
can be hysterical. So,
yes.
Yes.
it's sort of it's, I mean, it would be funny if it was not sad, but there is a certain irony to it. Like, if I don't understand or I don't want to validate what you're feeling, let me just invent a term for what your people are doing.
And all the psychiatry hospitals were made for the colonials. It weren't made for the indigenous people. So when I go, me as an indigenous person, I go to the psychiatry aisle, I find myself not how to say that, not contained. I find myself in a certain classism, and that would make me demonize psychiatry and psychology. And I think we have the results today, where people don't even think about going to a psychologist because they feel that
Yes.
going to a psychology would make me isolated, which I think
Yes.
I don't. It's just a hypothesis, but if we go back in history, people weren't going to psychiatrists because they know they would be in the hands of the French people, of the French colonial people.
And that's the issue, is that the setup of how we deal with mental health developed from like the way the colonizer looked at it. And by the way, they have the same facilities, but they also have diverse other facilities. And that's what I feel like is also a big challenge in North Africa, is that we have nothing else as a mental health facility other than the psychiatric hospitals that are close boarded. So for example, if you have, like, I had a friend who had a psychotic outbreak, and it happens, it's something that could happen in the lifetime of a person. And there's like so much research that is done around how some people could actually have the outbreak and then bring themselves back with like different forms of therapy that did not have them to be institutionalized. But that's the issue, is that our only way of dealing with mental health disorders like psychosis, for example, is to put people in mental health facilities that are very, very aggressive, actually, and very violent. And that is the way the French used to deal with mental health a long time ago. Not like this anymore. So we don't have diverse facilities, actually. I had a friend who had something like a few years ago, and the only way we could actually support him is to go to a private clinic. And then this private clinic would actually put him with stripes on the bed to give him medications. And I'm like, how is this how we deal with people? Like,
Mhm.
Or the other option is to put him in the Razi, which is the psychiatric facility in Tunisia that we know if you go in there, there's no way out. You're in the system and there's no way they're gonna let you out. And by the way, America is the same way. Like it's not just Tunisia. Once you're into a close-worded mental health facility like psychiatric hospital, you're in. That is it's very hard to come out. So for someone who is highly intelligent, like the friend that I have, and that he would have psychotic outbreaks just like provoked, for example, by other substances, and that he's not taking care of it, like his environment well. Like, why do we condemn these people, you know? And where do we take them? We don't. And then now you go to France and you see retreat centers and art therapy centers, and like there are actually, and where places where people could actually sleep, and it's a dorm, and there is like the facility to take care of them holistically and well, and not to attach them to the beds. And I'm like, yo, the guys evolved. Why are we still in that way of handling, you know, like in a barbarian way, actually. Like it shocked me. I can't believe since I've been back to Tunisia that I had a few cases where, you know, they needed that extra support and we had to take them to this clinic to attach them to the bed. And I'm like, I can't live with this, you know,
What?
we need to find something different.
What? This is inhuman. Like, I think there is. I've heard of like a certain therapy called the la thérapie institutionnelle, institutional therapy. When we talk about this therapy, you say that every person in the clinic should have a certain role. So from the guardian of the clinic, he has a role to when someone comes in, you should greet them, talk to them in a certain way. Every person in the clinic should have a certain role. But bringing someone and putting him in a certain bed, attaching him, giving him medication will just make the person way more like sick. So
Yeah.
we need a reform, not only. And when we talk about a reform, we're not just saying a reform like that is standardized in every country. We need something that is a North African, like a therapy
Yes,
that is instrumentalized on North Africa. Something that
absolutely.
makes the people feel that they are at home. Something that makes them grounded.
Yes. Yes, because that's what he needed. He needed just grounding.
Yes. That's what we lack today. Even like when we talk about therapies in the US and the West, it doesn't mean that the therapy in the West is the correct therapy that we should bring and do it, like standardize it into the North African territory. I think there is a work that should be done by mental health professionals to reform that in a certain way and that should be based on the cultural aspect of North Africa.
Absolutely agree.
I think it joins what Fatma was saying earlier about like us basically disconnecting from our identity, from our cultural values, because we took this model from the West, and to this day we do that. Even one of the reasons I started to part a little bit from coaching and going more into art therapy was this. At a certain point, I found that it was just duplicating a Western model and bringing it to a culture that is not. It just does not work. I'm sorry. Like, um, someone cannot hear our voices. I don't know if it's Guy. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we
Right.
can.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
So basically I think it's absolutely right. You were saying it, we come from like this culture that is not really individualistic, that does not necessarily go again with being like this collectivist culture. We've started to part a little bit from it, but we still cling
Yeah.
to it. So I don't know, like there's this dichotomy that we need to deal with, even in the way that we treat people. We cannot. There are so many things that culturally, in terms of values, in terms of, this is Ramadan, we can also talk about faith-based, um,
Yes.
therapy. There are so many things that cannot just be taken out of like a vacuum and then shoved into another culture and be like, okay, well, this is the model for you to heal. A lot of it needs to be I think, and this comes, as Bilal said, this comes down to the therapists doing this
Mm.
work to see how
Mhm.
can we adapt, what can we take, what can we leave. Last time, as we were talking about it, we talked about, for example, in other cultures, there are mantras. Dhikr basically is mantras.
Yes, I was just thinking about
It's
that.
really what it
Yeah,
is. If you, when you do dhikr, it's literally a mantra that you keep repeating and repeating and repeating.
totally.
So you do have that kind of a thing in your, in even in like in those, in our traditions. As an art therapist, one of the things that I absolutely love is the way people in our regions use music as a healing tool. Um, Last time I gave the example of Isawa, for example, or Sufi music. It's some people in Morocco go there with the sole purpose of like
To
listening to this
heal.
music and get into this alternate state of consciousness, and then coming back and they report feeling better. Why? I have no idea, but it works.
It
You know.
worked. It
So I think
absolutely
those are,
does.
yeah, so I think we need more research in terms of what happens in order to be able to come up with some sort of framework and to actually um put it, sorry, and in order to put it together. But we do also have traditionally, in our traditions, we had ways that people were healed amongst their communities, amongst, um,
Mhm.
I mean, if you look at our grandparents, the relationship they had with their neighbors, with their communities, we have self-isolated so much so that we think we have to be the entire village to ourselves, let alone when people start having huge responsibilities and they
Mhm.
feel isolated. The more they start feeling isolated, that's because, yeah, you were not supposed to do it on your own. And the levels of awareness that we have need to be really, I think there's, it's amazing that we have this awareness. Now it needs to be put in a framework of how can we support ourselves and
Um,
others. So
I have
Yusra,
a
yes.
question. Yeah, please, Reem, sorry. I have a question here actually. You were talking about like all these traditions or the practices we have as part of our culture. And like people do some practices and they feel actually better, but do these beliefs like impact or are also can these beliefs be the source of the stigma we have towards like or the perceptions we have towards mental health? Are these like a positive thing to have or to add to actually help our mental health, or are they also causes that are preventing us from seeking
Mm.
help, from actually going to like
Interesting question.
scientific therapy?
Thank you for bringing that, Yusra, from the community. I love this question. It's a really interesting one. I think it could do both. Like anything, it has like, a dark and a light side to
Yeah,
it.
it's a
Yeah,
double-edged
because
weapon.
like, yeah, it's both. So Rim was talking about the well, how did you call it, Rim?
Alternate states
Alternate
of consciousness.
the state of consciousness, which also like is called holotropic state, or we call it trance also. It is such an amazing tool of healing that actually could bypass 5 years of therapy, by the way. Like there's so much research done on this like conscious state, and how like just a few experiences like that could have you have trauma leave the body basically through like a um, physical way of living it
Manifestation.
through trance, and not having to like talk it, which is more mental. So like the other one, the
Mhm.
trance is more like body based. And we are very much like, if we want to talk about Amazigh, we're very much close to the earth. We're very, we feel a lot in our bodies. And I do believe that it's such an amazing healing tool and such a miracle that we have that in our countries, because that supports us, in our mental health a lot. However, I also see it used as something of harba, of like people actually get delusional about this stuff to a point where like, okay, now you're taking it out of its like healing modality, and the intention is what matters. So if you're going there with the intention of like, I'm gonna go crazy and lose myself and like all of that, of course, like the result is gonna be that, you know, and it will create mental health issues. Like it would create mental health issues because you will
Mhm.
start having distorted thoughts. But then if you use this as a space for you to heal and connect with your body and go to a holotropic state to get over whatever stuff that you don't have to be conscious of and talking about from like a mental perspective, then yes, it is beneficial. I just think that the way I see, for example, people in Aisawiya, like, you know, they kind of take it to another level sometimes, and you're like, this doesn't feel authentic, you know, like, come
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
on, dude,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
step it down, you know. So it really depends on the intention, but I think you could do both.
And
Totally.
just
I
to
think,
put a caveat, I'm sorry, Bilal, if I just can put a
yeah,
caveat to that, everything is
of
a
course.
nuance. I think everything
Yeah.
is a nuance. Everything, and that's why I was saying we need to do research on this because it's true.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
there's a lot of folklore to it. There's a lot of stigma to it because of the way it is used. But to me, if you want to look at it like just from an objective perspective, there is something to that needs to be
Yeah.
researched and put into like its entire context. I'm sorry, I just needed to put that because
Of course, of course, of
it's
course.
very
This is very
important. You're right.
interesting.
I totally agree,
This
Reem. Yeah.
this is very interesting, Rim. I think that's what you said, and it's way like the idea of utilizing these traditional treatments, these traditional healing treatments, needs to be in a certain how to say that needs to be researched and analyzed and utilized. The
Yes.
idea is that I think there is a distinction between using this in a more holistic treatment and using it by people who are experts on it. But the idea is that since we don't have research and since we don't have so much analysis
Mhm.
on these treatments, it is used by charlatans and
Yeah.
by opportunists. Great. So as I was saying, today it is used by charlatans. So they come and they sell hope for people, saying that
Mhm.
if you do this and that, you could get healed from autism, you can get healed from cancer. So if there is no reform, I don't know, like something that is
Yeah, yeah,
made
yeah.
by research and by experts, we can't really rely on that because there is this stigma that comes in some ways from that because we see that there is an attribution of mental disorders um, to metaphysical entities, metaphysical stuff like evil eye, jinn. It's important to take that in consideration. And even in therapy, like when I have patients telling me that they would go for ruqya, I don't tell them not to go. I think that it's really important that they go to ruqya and they
Yeah.
keep doing therapy because it's really important
It's
to
true.
mix the two. So utilizing
Absolutely.
this. Totally, yes. So utilizing the holistic model, the traditional model with more scientific model, and finding like a bridge between them is really important to do.
Absolutely. And I think you said the keyword is holistic. I think even because like now we were talking about like the cultural aspect, but if you talk about like clinical cases, you can do without a therapist. You can do without sometimes a psychiatrist. You can
Yeah,
sometimes you can do
absolutely.
without medication, and I think all those components need to come together in order to support.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. And I think there is a certain stigma, whether we want it or not. The stigma remains when we talk to about mental health, culturally at least.
Yeah, it's almost as if like we need to bring the scientific method to the soul aspect of doing healing, you know, which is the bridge between the East and the West, basically. What we are good at and what they are good at, and like mix, blend it together and be like, hello, there's
And
something
I
that
think we
can
were talking
actually.
about this earlier, Fatima, where now we have Islamic psychology, which is like a whole new reform
Yes,
of
I
using
need to
what is
research that.
scientific. Yes, using what is scientific along with what is traditional, what is known, the beliefs of the community. So we had like the idea that there is at first it was just that there is only the medical model saying that there should be lesions to have symptoms, but then we come to a holistic model PBS, psychological, biological, and sociological, that there is a multifactorial uh, multifactorial process happening that makes disorders or symptoms. And now there is still a reform to use like religion and to use ruh and this concept of the soul, to utilize it and try to find a certain bridge between what is religious and what is scientific.
That's a really interesting path. I'm really curious to explore it because I did feel that psychology, I had two masters in it, and like I studied positive psychology also on my own. And what really was so shocking to me is that there was no talking about faith at all in any of it. And I'm like, faith is what keeps me sane. Like, how come that this is not even something we could actually like look at and bring up with our patients and or talk about in even positive psychology and faith and soul are interrelated, and it's as if there is like this fear which I think happened in the last like 100 years or so to bring that aspect of the human, and now it's like a whole big window and doors are opening on this. And so this is why pathways like Islamic psychology are showing up. And I'm wondering what else. There's the trans uh, I need to like research it again, but there is also one, Bilal, that you should definitely check out. Is transgenerational? No, not transgenerational.
Transgenerational.
No, not transgenerational. Like a different kind of psychology that actually takes in the soul. Now there are doctorates in it as well.
Is it
That I
is it
think
ergotherapy, the one by
no, no,
Viktor
no,
Frankl?
no.
Okay.
I'm gonna look for it. Transcendental
Transcendental.
therapy.
Okay. Yes.
Transcendental.
Yes.
Okay.
And there is even like a doctorate in it, which takes like the
Wow.
scientific of what we're talking about and the holistic and soul aspect of therapy and faith. And there are doctorates in it now, and you can do a lot of research in it. And it's like obviously the doctors are only based in California, like, and it's not super accessible to us, obviously. But it would be really interesting to even self-teach ourselves to get like a few books about that. And I think it would be really cool to like, borrow a few models. My dream is to have a clinic in North Africa where we could all work as practitioners in mental health from the scientific standpoint and the healing standpoint, and the art therapy standpoint, and all of it. And also have the possibility of people sleeping in those facilities. So if you have somebody having like ce qu'on dit décompensation psychologique, like where like they need an actual people watching them every day and potentially giving medication and all of that, they don't need to be in like those really like soulless clinics. Why?
Mm.
Can it be like a community center where people are actually like supporting each other and caring for each other and just like healing the attachment wounds that these people have, could have them like really heal as humans and have a therapist also see them? That's my dream. That's like if we wanted to talk about like what could be possible and like move a little bit from like the doomsday of what is the state of mental health in North Africa and like dream a little bit, that's what I would be dreaming.
I would definitely send a CV to your clinic.
Please, please,
But
you are welcome
talking,
anytime. You come do like an artistic residency.
but
Actually, my
even
dream that
care.
sorry, Reem.
Yes, please go ahead.
I was just gonna say that actually my dream is not so far from yours because I live like I am from the mountains, so from the mountains, like I'm a
Mm,
Kabyle, I'm a Mazir, so from the mountains, and we have a
wow.
big house there, and I go like every weekend. So every weekend I'm there, and the peacefulness of being with the mountains, with like nature, like I feel grounded in that. So my dream is to open a clinic there and like having like people
Inshallah.
who are living through, I don't know, a burnout or something, bringing them into the mountains and giving them a whole weekend of peacefulness. So yeah.
See, I
I
would send
love
my CV
that.
to that
Please
clinic.
say that again, Reem.
I was like, I would
I
send my
didn't hear you.
CV to that clinic. I want to
I'm
live in the
also
Great.
sending my CV there.
You
Are you kidding?
you
Like we
guys
should
are
be
directly accepted.
exchanging our tools between each other. Like you, that's also part of the dream, y'all. Is that it's a community. It's like we have people coming in and going, and like we're exchanging, notes and coming to each other and like using our tools for each other. Like
Mhm.
That would be amazing. Um, Your dream, Bilal, maybe leads us to one aspect maybe we didn't mention, is actually the contrast between urban and rural areas and the access to like to healthcare. What's the difference and what are the consequences of limited access maybe in rural areas? What do you think is the impact here?
Okay, if I can go first, I think the whole idea is that big cities are typically in the north. So big cities are way more have a better mental health infrastructure. So you would find like every
Yeah.
part of the city, you would find like psychologists, psychiatrists, or mental health facilities. But when you go a bit into rural areas, there's less psychologists and there is less people who are more inclined into um, into evidence-based treatments. And you would find that in rural areas, people believe more in traditional healing. So they would go into someone who's a healer or someone who we call معطية. So someone who has a certain power to heal the person. So this kind of ideas. So the more you go to rural areas, the more there's more stigma about mental health. But
Yeah.
nowadays with social media, this is going a bit better. So everyone has a phone, everyone has social media. So there's this acculturation with everything that is in the West, everything that is on social media, and there's less people. There's more inclination into mental health based treatments.
There's a question in the chat. How can we integrate traditional healing methods with modern psychological approach in North Africa?
I think it's what we were saying earlier.
Yeah, we were just talking about that, like these healing centers, and also like integrating what you just said earlier, Bilal, like having the therapy and also going to these healing modalities like Ruqya, like having both. Like for example, for me, if I'm not, I also have a therapist, but I also use my voice and also art therapy, and I go to like art therapists and support myself with family constellation, and I use different modalities to be able to like know different parts of myself. Like there's nothing that is superior to the other. I mean, obviously, like Bilal said earlier, there are some charlatans out there, and you need to learn how to use your discernment onto like who you could trust energetically and intuitively and who you cannot. So like there's no way of us knowing. But like pursuing both modalities to the best that you can.
Yeah, it's a holistic
I remember,
approach. And just to answer the question that was said by Yusra, I think um, it depends on what we mean by mental health, because there's a lot that we can put into mental health.
Yeah.
Someone who has, for example, schizophrenia is not the same as someone who has
Yeah.
anxiety. Someone who's bipolar is not the same as someone who's going through,
Yeah.
stress, like chronic stress, even though chronic stress can be harmful to your health. So I think it also depends, like it depends on who are we talking about. Generally speaking, rural areas are underserved, but if I have to talk about my country, the entire country is underserved. Like
Mm.
we have 2,000 beds for mental health for a
Oh,
population of almost 40 million people. That gives you exactly what you need to know about
wow.
where we position mental health. um, and that is part of the issue. We are starting to bring addiction clinics. Like we have not even started talking about other issues like addiction, like all of that. So there are a few addiction clinics, there are a few mental health professionals, mainly in the cities. But it is true that today in the rural areas, it's still like Bilal said. So I think there's a lot of similarities with what's going on in Algeria. It's like we go into healers, to people who are sometimes qualified, sometimes not, but you have no idea, you have no way of verifying. And this is part of why I was saying earlier in the conversation that we need some legal, canvas, something that organizes mental health support. Even if it's unconventional, you have to have some certain level of
Mm.
verification can be done just to vet those people. Because when you talk about like someone coming to
Absolutely.
you in a state of I don't know how to despair, c'est de la détresse en fait. they come in despair. So you can very easily start into like psychological games. It can be a slippery slope. So how
Uh-huh.
can we protect also people who are courageous enough to seek the support, to find the right people? And then talking, of course, about the rural areas. um a few years ago, Morocco closed this facility that used to be very famous called Boya Omar. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It was a hellhole. That's the only thing I can say about that place, where they used to put shackles on people
Ya
having
Allah.
psychotic breaks. Or like, it was horrible, but it was very well known. And it was, what was incredible when I discovered, because I discovered it when it was closed, but it lasted for years and everyone thought it was normal. That's the level of stigma that we put on people who have mental breakdowns, or who
Mm.
have, who go
Yeah,
into
yeah,
psychotic breaks. So it speaks, a lot about the kind of education that we have to do to the public, whether it be it in rural areas or in urban areas. And a last element of segregation, or like of people being underserved, is that people who come from underserved areas are generally struggle more with mental health conditions, simply because there is no support offered, that it's still little expensive to have access. And when you
Mhm.
don't have any coverage, any support from the state to reimburse the sessions, well, of course, it remains seen as a luxury.
Yes, if I can just add something there, I think there's another element, there's another factor too. Like when the more you go to rural areas, the more there is more correlation with poverty, and the more there's more relation with poverty, we know that North African countries are developing countries, so we are socioeconomically we are lower socioeconomic countries. So the more you go into rural areas, the more you find that people are more inclined to go to traditional healers, because a traditional healer wouldn't tell you a price of like a higher price. He would tell you, just give me what you have. So this is done in Algeria, where when you go to a healer, he would tell you, "أعطيني وش عندك," give me what you have. So but when you go to a psychologist or psychiatrist, you know that the price is a bit higher, and seeing that we are a low economic country, people can't afford this kind of treatment. So thinking that they would go to a psychologist and have like a 3-6 months of treatment every week, once every week, is a bit not affordable. So they would tend to go to a traditional healer who would tell them, just give me 3 sessions, two sessions, and we're done.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, just for the joke, I used to have focus groups where we talked about this, like just conversational focus groups. And one of the ladies who came from a very underserved population, we were talking, and she was like, you know what, I used to go to a fortune teller, and I know she's not going to help me, but it's just because it costs 10 dirhams, which is basically almost $1.
Mhm.
She's like, it just costs $1 and I can tell her whatever I want. So I used to go
Mhm.
pay her, and then I get everything I want to say, and she
And
tells
she
me
gets
whatever she tells.
space.
That's the level of despair we've reached. And I thought it was like,
Wow.
yeah, it makes me smile, but at the same time, it's true. People need where like safe spaces to talk.
Yes,
Mhm.
that's exactly what we need. We don't need more psychiatric hospitals and more beds. We need like safe spaces in which we could gather and have like a conversation, a decent conversation, and, and feel the human connection. Because at the end of the day, like the first thing that what we when we are born that actually defines our whole life is how we attach to like the first caregivers, and the attachment is actually defines also how we are socially with people. So if we have poor attachment styles, then we're going to suffer socially for our whole lives. And right now, we are so away from each other that that is triggering a lot of anxiety, not just for us, but also for the individualist countries too. And I really feel like the more we create like communities around us and safe spaces, the more like we also get to treat that attachment, to know that I could have people around me and I'm not alone. I suffered that a lot, honestly, mostly living in a Western country and coming back and like it was hard to. It took me some time to remember that I'm not alone, that I have a whole tribe around me, and that's how we live. But we also forgot it, not just even the people who live in Tunisia and lived in Tunisia their whole lives. They like we're all having nuclear families of like, imagine having a woman working all day and taking care of cooking and also her kids, because also we need to talk about the mental health for women specifically as a whole area, which is like complete burnout in North Africa, complete all over.
Yeah.
And I'm just like reflecting on how far we've come from the way we used to live, and which is like, I think, the healthiest way to actually bring us back to our connection with ourselves and also to our lands. And that the answer is also within us. Like, we know how to gather, we know like, look at us. I don't know you, Bilal, and also Rima. We spent like good amount of time together, and I'm so happy to see you again. But like, this feels as if it's so easy to connect. Like, if I was somewhere else and like an international group call, we will have like a connection question, we'll maybe have like a meditation, try to connect people, put them in breakout rooms. This happened instantly. It's like, it's just so instinctual, for us. But somehow we also have a lot of social anxiety now, which is very new, I think, to our culture. I don't think we used to have that a lot, but now I could feel it more and more. I don't know if you both relate to that too.
Yeah,
Actually,
of course.
entre parenthèses, I think the reaction of social anxiety is totally normal in like living in a community where you don't have like the well-being of, you don't have a good sleeping pattern, you don't have a good nutrition, you go and work 40 hours a week in a certain place where there's no health, there's no mental health, and you have to take a bus full of people. All of these
Yeah.
factors play a role in making the social anxiety. And having anxiety is a call for help, is your body telling you that there is something wrong happening in your environment. And the idea that there is something wrong happening in your environment is not totally your fault, but it's the society that made it in a certain way. I'm a bit deterministic in my thoughts, but the idea is that there is factors in society that are making you feel what you feel today.
Hmm.
Yeah, of course. I mean, um, there was this Harvard longevity study about happiness where they followed this cohort for more than 74 years. And the number one factor of happiness is the solidity of your social ties. They tested for marriage, for money, for kids, for a lot of things. And of course, I mean, we can talk about each one of those apart, but like the number one factor was, if I fall, can I have a community that's going to rise me? Do I
Yeah.
have the social, do I have are my social ties strong enough? And I think this brings us back to, especially in our cultures where this has been traditionally our way of doing things, it is becoming central to recreate communities, to come back to that
Yep.
sense of oneness. And I'm so grateful for the Algiers Hub for doing it across countries, because it is it is absolutely amazing the way we connect to each other's history, the way we connect to each other's
Mhm.
identities, because at the end of the day, there is this very much shared subconscious,
Mhm.
heritage.
Absolutely. And it's felt
It's like,
right away. It's really crazy. It's the same land.
yeah, it is.
They
So
just
I'm sorry, you're
divided
trying
us
to ask us a
with
question.
borders.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Definitely, like likewise, and everything you said is relatable, and we share the same feeling. Um, so maybe if we so you mentioned before, Reem and all of you, like the systemic issues and the challenges we have. We have also a barrier, and you mentioned that too, barrier of language. Like we use we are all used like different languages. That's also a challenge that we face, maybe to connect with patients or to democratize more mental health. So how can we address that? and improve all these systemic issues, in your opinion?
I would love to have Reem and Fatima thought on that because I'm like they have more experience than me. And in my work as a therapist, I'm working as an interpret, as a translator, because I did my studies in Arabic, but I'm more exposed to English and French literature. And I
Mhm.
have to use that material in French and English, translate it into Arabic or Amazigh, and then give it to the
Wow.
patients or to the people. So now we're like stuck between like this multilingual many languages between French, English, Arabic, and Amazigh, and I feel like it's very important to first of all use Amazigh and Arabic to talk to the local people to to feel like we need this kind of I don't know how to call it, but to feel relatable to them. Because if you will speak
Mm.
to them with terminology that you bring from foreign languages, they wouldn't really relate to you.
Yeah. Uh, I hear your point, Bilal, absolutely. And I think there is also a certain familiarity and a certain like affection in using our language. At the same time, I have personally found in my experience somehow, mostly with like you younger generation, which is mostly like the people I work with, like they really like using three languages, like Arabic, like dialect, Tunisian, Dirja, French, and English. Um, Even for like the millennial generation, I'm not just talking about Gen Zs, like even the people in their 40s, they still are comfortable with using like different languages. And I'm talking about mostly group aspect, and like the one-on-one is true that it's much better to speak like our own language, but for the group aspect, because there are people with different, and sometimes you have people coming from different backgrounds, is like finding a language that sometimes is unifying but also puts some distance, because people when they come together in the beginning, there's like a little bit of like, I would like to put a little bit of distance with my emotions, and therefore I do not want to hear them or talk about them in my own language because it feels like a lot, you know. And it's been interesting to start in English, you know, and put a little bit of that distance. It just feels a little bit safer and a little bit inclusive, but then, you know, build to a certain level of more intimacy using our own language. Even for me, when I lead a meditation, I don't know about you, Reem, when I lead the meditation in Arabic, I laugh at the language I'm using because it feels weird, because of how I heard it also, and how people like hear meditation, like in the mostly when you go on YouTube and look for meditation in anything, what are you gonna find it in Arabic? No, you're gonna find it in English. So even the way these like mindfulness tools, the way they are promoted in a different language. So sometimes people feel like much more at ease receiving them the same way that they know them. But I definitely want to challenge myself to be more in my dialect, because I really think that's important. That reinforces our identity, and it's just like important to get comfortable with it.
Yeah. I would totally second everything that you guys said. From the language perspective, if you look at my Instagram page, I used to speak in English, and then recently I switched to Darija because I think that there is a certain, like, honestly, it's super challenging, and I use a weird language, and sometimes I look at myself and I'm like, who speaks like that? But it is important because that's the way you democratize the information, and that's the way you make it become normal. I'm gonna feel
Mm,
awkward for the next probably year or two, but that's part of also owning it. From a systemic perspective, I would
mm,
say what I said earlier. We need more laws, we need more funding, we need more research in academia to be included,
research.
to
Like,
to sort of vet all this information that is there, and to actually kind of structure all these approaches that are amazing but that need some scientific backbone. So like, and the role for us as Amazirs, as Arabs, as people from North Africa. Our job is to do that for ourselves. Nobody's going to come from abroad and tell you, oh, let me research your own culture for you. You know, that's our job.
Totally. Yes.
To be
Yes.
honest, like we
It
have to also
is. It
take
is.
our own responsibility as actors. But I feel like there is a start shy, because our culture, like our language, is not necessarily emotional in its core, especially Moroccan Darija, and Algerians as well. We feel like we're fighting even though we're just talking.
That's very interesting.
Really.
Actually, that's very interesting. The aggressivity in our language is very interesting to research. How come we have an aggressive
Exactly.
Totally.
dialect?
I know. Like even when you're being sweet, it sounds aggressive. Exactly. So and that's the challenge, because when you want to bring some softness to it, when you want to bring some, emotion that
Totally.
is required for, for the safe space and the
It feels
therapies, and
weird.
yeah, I know that's why it feels weird, because we don't have this habit of owning our emotions and owning
Mm.
those vulnerable parts of ourselves. So automatically you're going to switch to French or to English because it feels more comfortable, because it's you know so I mean, it's just a funny thing to say, but it's also the reality of
It's
who we
so
are as
true.
people.
Thank you. I feel like
and
you just did this to my head.
and as
Yes,
you
and
make
you
a
can
depth
also
in the culture, it's going to be uncomfortable.
totally, totally. And you can see that people are like North African are more reluctant to talk about their emotions in their like local language. And I think I always go back to history. I think it's because like being emotional is weakness. They were feeling that this is the way. Like in when there was the French colony here, people, if you are weak, you would die. If you are weak, you would be instrumentalized. And this ideas of being of showing your emotions is very new for our people. Like you can only see like and it's only like millennials and Gen Zs who can like talk about their emotions very freely, and still they don't use their local language, and then they use like English or French. I find it even in myself. Like if I talk about like stuff that are emotional, I tend to go to switch to English or French.
Same, same. You know what I did in my undergrad in psych? There was like, at the end of 3 years, they ask you to do like a report or like a mini research. You know what my research was? Is like, how do we code switch when we start talking about emotion in our in our culture? Like we just go to French directly. It's just like, no, I cannot be doing it in Tunisian. I don't even know in Derja how to do that.
Someone in the comment section said what you just said. He was like, we don't have the words. Well, then we have
We
to
don't
create
have the
words. I
words.
think in Arabic, like in اللغة العربية الفصحى, you can find those words. Now, I don't know that we have them in our own dialects because we're not as, emotional. But maybe it is a part of us to reclaim, and it's a part of us that needs to be researched as well. Um, so yeah, there is definitely effort to be made.
You know what is
But
funny, Reem, though, is that we
of
say we're not emotional, but we actually so are. And
course,
socially, like the social intelligence and emotional intelligence that I know in North Africans, for me, is just off the roof. It's just not communicated. So the
verbalize.
block is here. It's not here. The heart is there. The emotions are all over.
Totally,
It's just that
yes.
we cannot have them out, you know?
Yeah, it's problem of communication maybe. So
Yeah.
maybe this can so yeah, it's like a language and communication issue, not only like um a mental well-being issue, but maybe it can be tackled. Do you think uh, it can be tackled from schools, like to introduce these topics, first mental health, and to start introducing them in our local languages, in Arabic at least, from schools from an early age. This can be
Absolutely.
help. This can help. Sorry, to maybe improve this point. And how can this promote early intervention, and how can this improve the whole situation on the long term?
I think that's the solution.
Oh, I personally have a little bit of a controversial,
Yeah,
I
I wanted to hear your opinion,
little bit
Reem.
of a controversial opinion on that. For me, as far as schools go, we can teach kids emotional intelligence, like to
Mhm.
know themselves, to understand their emotions. But a kid has nothing to do with stress and anxiety and depression, because generally it's the parents. Like if you see stressed kids, look at their parents. It's
Totally.
almost, and again, if most children, because I teach in university, and most um, difficult students, you're going to find a difficult family history. So
Mm.
the person that you actually need to address is the parents. A child normally who lives in a loving home, unless it's a clinical thing, like, and it happens, most kids are fine. A child,
Mhm.
when they want to laugh, they laugh, and then they fall and they cry, and then you see them see something shiny and they start laughing again. They live in the moment, in the present moment. So for me, I think kids need to learn to verbalize emotions, to understand emotions, to understand how to deal with emotions. But
Yes.
I would not necessarily, I don't know, but that's just my opinion. I would not necessarily advise on making them super aware of the mental health issues, because they're going to start seeing them. If I like, it's the syndrome that happens with doctors. They see so much illness that sometimes they start getting scared of those illnesses, because suddenly there's an awareness that this could happen and this could happen and this could happen.
Hmm.
So for me, it would be like, teach them what they need to know, but leave them alone. They don't
Emotional
have to be
intelligence.
therapists at 5.
Yeah.
I think what you're saying, Reem, is literally the solution. Because if you don't teach them how to manage stress, that's not for them. But if you teach them to express themselves, that's actually what you should do to manage the stress. So you won't teach them about stress, but teaching them about expressing their emotions, expressing what they feel, what they need, expressing their history, their connection with their parents. This is what we need to have to not this is the antagonist of stress in some ways.
Mhm.
What we should utilize in schools is prevention of bullying, for example. This is really important. This is something that
Mhm.
that is needed in schools. But to tell them about depression or anxiety, all this, I think, that are trainings for parents. So if we could open a school for parents, that would be good. I don't think it's possible, but yeah.
Totally on board with that. Actually, Beer from the community said something really interesting. I'm actually doing my PhD project on social and emotional learning. Amazing, yay you! And most of the research and interventions are dedicated to early child education, which also include community and families. Yay! And that has an impact on well-being and mental health. And the whole idea is to allow these students to know and manage their own emotions. Absolutely. That's like what the greater good kind of club is doing. This is like an interesting club in the United States that are basically like they are creating curriculums of education for all schools for kids to learn emotional intelligence. So like learn how to perceive them and learn how to actually communicate them, and that's it. And just with that, they're really seeing incredible results with the kids growing up to be, teenagers that are not even living a crisis. They are able to express and to manage and to be well and to be socially well as well. And I mean, I don't know when we're gonna be able to see something like that in North Africa, but I really think if actually we do that, just that intervention, it will shift the whole social fabric of the next generation of our community for like forever.
Yeah, definitely. Um, so speaking of that, maybe in the more general way, what reforms do you think are needed in psychology education and training for both professionals and public in our region?
I didn't hear the question. I'm looking at the chat.
Okay,
Sorry.
yeah. Sure, I can uh, tell it again. So, speaking of reforms and things we can improve, so maybe in a more general way, not only kids, what are the reforms you think are needed in psychology education and training for both professional or public?
Okay.
I think the first.
Go ahead, Bilal.
You go, Reem. You
Please.
go. You go.
I think again we're talking about a systemic thing. If we're going to talk about psychology education, then we're going to talk about first of all the therapists. Are they have to go, for me they have to go through therapy before you have to do that work on yourself before you can support someone else. It has to be part of the curriculum. I don't know if it's the case in Tunisia or Algeria, but in Morocco it's not yet mandatory, and I think it's absolutely needs to be. You absolutely need to have, as a therapist, as a practicing therapist, you need to have a supervisor or like a therapist that follows with you, even if it's like once a month or like once every 2 months or something. But like you need to keep that check and balance, because your first tool besides your knowledge is yourself. It's your own mental health, your own well-being, your own ability to cope with whatever stories you're going to hear, and to remain, to keep that enough distance to be empathetic, but also keep enough distance with regards to the stories that you hear. And I think that sometimes it can be very challenging as someone who's been practicing. There are so many cases, especially when I just started 10 years ago, when I needed my therapist and I needed my supervisor to tell me, hey, why does it bother you that much? It's not your
Mm,
story, it's theirs. you know it's not
mm,
your purpose. So I feel like those deontological rules are there to protect the practitioner themselves before they,
Yes.
and to protect also the clients or the patients that they're going to receive. That's from one side. On the other side, talking about schools, where do people spend most of their time? They spend it in school or in work. And in those two places, well-being needs to be part of the equation, which is not today. Money is the name of the game today. It's not your well-being, it's not your mental health. It's just you are a tool of
mm.
production. And
Yes.
unfortunately, in even more in those recent generations that we see now, parents are obsessing over grades. It has become mental. And so you see
Mm,
kids who are 3, 4, 5 being stressed over grades. What kind of grade do you have in kindergarten? Leave the kids
yeah.
alone, And it's
Performance obsession.
exactly, it's performance obsession, but then you're not seen as a person, you're seen as a tool of production. So I feel like
Mm-hmm.
we need to reverse that paradigm and bring back the humanity in humans. That as long as there is Bilal was talking earlier about bullying. I know in my experience many schools that don't address bullying. We know today how difficult it is. We need to also work a lot with parents on understanding that tablets, social media is not for kids. And if any parent is watching us today, for God's sake, don't leave a phone or a tablet in your child's hands indefinitely. If you want to do so, do it in a supervised manner. Be aware
Mm,
of what your kids are watching. When I see children watching like those shorts, 10 seconds, 10 seconds, 10 seconds, what are you training your brain to do? It's never going to focus. It's never going to do
Mhm.
the deep focus and the deep work that needs to be happening.
Absolutely.
And so when we talk about like, and this is the challenge, it's because it's a systemic thing. It's the social media, it's the schools, it's the workplace where people have incredibly difficult targets that they need to reach. It's the so the entire system needs an awareness, like this level of awareness, this consciousness that, oh my god, if we don't take care of people, we're going to have again and again more and more people falling sick, which I continue to stand by my point, for me is a healthy response to their sick environment. People
Yes.
being stressed, people having depressions, people being anxious is literally the healthiest response to the craziness of the modern society, especially in the urban areas in our countries. So that's that.
100%. Absolutely.
Very good day.
Absolutely,
Take
Reem.
your
Thank you
password.
so much. This is a great point. Great point. And
Yes.
they think what we need is a reform, as Reem said. And to do the reform, we need workshops, we need psychologists and therapists to do work on themselves and then to help people. And to help people, you need to speak the language of the people. You need to speak to them and see their problem and see what you should, in some ways, transcend this materialistic word into something that is more into the well-being of the people. Community, support, families, friends, all of these are really important. We need to reform that by workshops, by creating, I don't know, by
Yes.
creating more videos, by psychologists taking their positions out of the people who are, I don't know, who are only searching for the money, for fame, or for the language. I don't know now. But I think there should be a reform, as Reem said, and for it to happen, there should be more events like this, more of what we are doing
Mhm.
today, and more of us speaking about this and speaking.
Mhm.
And I hope next time we could do this in Amazigh or in Arabic.
Ooh, Habibi, ya Amazigh, I never even heard the language, and I am like direct descendant. It's like really sad here. We have only one village that is still speaking a little bit. Like I really want to come to Algeria actually to explore that, and
You're
just like
welcome.
seeing the Isaac and just seeing this like coming together is like super empowering, and it feels like Karima. I already felt that when I met you the first time. Like we're so aligned. It's as if we grew up together and aligned about how we see psychology and mental health in our countries and in the world, and that also is really surprising to me. Like there needed to be a gathering like this to be to be able to see it, and recognize it and like enjoy it as well. I am sick, y'all. This was such an incredible conversation, and I'm so happy I'm here. I need to go take care of myself and have some medication before I go to sleep, and I'm exhausted. Thank you so much for having me and for being such incredible allies. Reem, I know you're gonna
Thank
come back,
you.
Habiba. I know you are. I know you love Tunisia.
Definitely.
Bilal, you're also welcome. Yusra, you
Inshallah.
too. And everybody else on the chat, I would love to meet you at one point. Everyone who's here. This was really lovely. Thank you. But you guys
Thank you
feel
so
free to
much.
continue.
Thank you, Fatma.
I'm
Thank you
gonna
so much,
take care of
Fatma. Thank
myself.
you.
Thank you,
Thank you so
Take
Fatma.
much, Fatima.
care. Thank you so much. So appreciate it.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you. I
Take care.
appreciate
Speedy
you all.
recovery, inshallah.
Aishik,
Inshallah. Yeah.
inshallah, I see you all soon in person, inshallah. But this is awesome. This
Inshallah.
was
Thank
amazing. Thank you.
Cheers.
thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Thank you, Saad Farad.
Well, I think we also did on a fait le tour de toutes les questions. Bilal, I really appreciate the last point you have mentioned of doing more of this, what we did today. I'd like to thank you, Reem, so much for your contribution. Fatma also did great. Bilal and all of you participants, thank you so much for being here today. And definitely, as we were saying before everyone joined, I think we are making history. This is a first coming together as a region. So thank you so much, and that this empowers us to do more and to actually move forward with this initiative and other ones similar to it, inshallah. Thank you so much. So I would like, if you all are okay, I would like to give a couple of minutes if anyone has like a question that wants to ask Bilal or Rim.
Sure.
You can put it in the chat. We can take just a couple of minutes to answer those questions, and we can say good night, inshallah.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you so
There
much,
was one
Yusra.
question. Thank you so much, Yusra. There was one question. Has any one of you have had therapy or something like that? I don't know. I saw it when we
Oh,
were talking. Um,
let me check.
I think it was Ahmed who asked, but I'm not sure. Oh, has anyone here ever gone
Yeah,
to therapy? Yeah.
there.
Um, Ahmed, just to answer your question very quickly, yes, and a lot of it. um, and it's I feel like it's so I've done many types of therapies. Rebirth, which is a breathing thing that takes you into another state of consciousness. The You live in proof. This is great. So you understand. I've done classical therapy, like talking to a psychologist. I've done constellations, family constellations, very powerful. Art therapy, obviously, because that's where my heart ended up stationing. So, I feel like every kind of therapy has its advantages, has its uh, epiphanies, and you're not going to go through the same things in the same way. I feel like certain types of therapies will resonate with some people more than others. I know
Yes.
that, for example, NLP did not resonate with me. I know that hypnotherapy did not resonate. I did it, but it didn't just resonate the way other people have said, wow, it was life changing for me. So I feel like you're going to have to do your own research and see what resonates with you most. And I feel like in every um, season of life and every version of you is going to resonate maybe with different types depending on what you need. But I would totally advise anyway to ask for help. And psychotherapy, classical psychotherapy is, I know it's long and it's boring, but it's also very efficient for a reason. So, you know, if you feel that if anyone here feels that they need help, I would highly advise that you go through some kind of support. And please, please, please feel free to ask for support.
Yes. Thank you so much, Reem. This is golden advice. Thank you so much. And I think choosing psychology, we choose psychology not just as something. How to say that? As arbitrary, as an arbitrary choice. I think we choose psychology to understand more about ourselves, and to understand more about yourself, you need an objective view. And to have an objective view, therapy is the best thing to do. I think I wouldn't be with you today as a speaker if I didn't do exposure therapy. I did exposure therapy on myself because I had so much anxiety, and it helped immensely to be around you here today. And today I feel like, and actually, like in my history, I looked for a CBT therapist here in Algeria, and I didn't find. And there was like very like there like few people who did CBT. And I told myself that I should go into CBT to bring this evidence-based treatments in Algeria. And the people I found were mentors for me, and they really helped. So therapy would not only help you, but it would help you to it would not only you would not only help you in certain things in your life, but you would understand yourself more. You would understand the depth of your history and the depth of how of your potential. So, as Reem said, I can't say it better. If you feel the need to go to therapy, do your research, and there is so much therapies that could eventually be the one you would need, and it really helps immensely.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rim. Thank you, Milan. Maybe we take one more last question quickly. We have here in this chat, how can we leverage social media and digital tools to promote mental health awareness?
If I
Um,
can go,
yeah,
okay,
please
you go,
go,
Reem.
go,
Okay,
go, go, go.
so sure. I think what we should do is, as Reem said earlier, we should utilize social media by making content, but you need to make content in the language of the people. You need to make content with Arabic or Amazigh. Arabic meaning the dialect of your country, and utilize this, because if you speak another language to the people in the content, they wouldn't feel this human aspect. They wouldn't feel that, they wouldn't engage with you. So using the language of the people would help immensely in normalizing psychology, in normalizing mental disorders, and eventually lead people to seek for help. So I think this is the most important key, the key thing. And I think what we did today is a first thing. Doing it in English is good, but I think we should go on after that and do it in Arabic, in the Amazigh, and it would be great if you could use that in next events.
For me, the power of social media would be maybe probably through storytelling. So, as we are talking from a shaper's perspective, I'll tell you very quickly about a campaign that we did in 2018. And it was about breaking the stigma around mental health. And so our position was basically, instead of us talking about mental health conditions, let us speak to people who have actually gone through different mental health conditions. And so we just basically asked for videos, either with faces showing or not, from people, from very different people, from the entire community. And what was absolutely amazing is that within the span of 4 weeks, we received 20 videos. So we're like, okay, we're going to program like 2 every day or like 3 every day, and it's going to be amazing. And the week when we started launching the videos, within 3 days, we received more than 100 videos. We didn't know what to do with those, to the point where we started telling hubs, you know what? If a video comes to you, just like launch it from your page and we'll see how to do with it. It was a global mental health campaign. And so it was absolutely fantastic, because what that campaign allowed was for the actual concerned people to take the stand, for them to tell their own stories. They're not children. I don't need to speak for them. They can talk for themselves. And what was amazing is that even in countries where we think we have this preconceived idea that our countries are underserved, but you know what? In Canada, in the US, in Scandinavian countries, it's fantastic. Maybe the mental health conditions are taken more seriously. Maybe they have the facilities, but the stigma is still there. Some people still were talking about how stigmatized they felt, even though there were facilities to take care of them, even though they didn't struggle maybe as much for everything that's like structural, but the feeling of isolation was exactly the same. The shame that was surrounding them going through that difficult time was still the same. We even had stories of people who were saying, I feel great now, and I don't even feel bad about saying what happened in my past history, but I'm afraid that if my in-laws figure it out, that I'm going to be stigmatized based on something that happened to me 20 years ago. And that is the level of awareness that we need to bring into people's heads, that, hey, your judgment is causing someone else to completely shut down. And it's not even something that is concerning. If you just start considering mental health conditions just like any other sickness that can be healed and that people can move on and can be really well after that and thrive, well, then we'll have conceived something that's really amazing. And so for me, one of the most powerful experiences with social media was that storytelling, was those stories, giving people a platform to talk for themselves. And of course, if you want to do like all the work of explaining, of having like professionals like Bilal, like Fatma, or like Abir, who's doing her PhD in the topic, who want to like sort of explain and help people better understand themselves and better understand what certain issues are within our societies, then of course that would be amazing.
Amazing.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so much. Thank you. Thanks to you, Rin. Thank you. That was very valuable. Thanks a lot. So I think we have come to the end of this beautiful session and evening with you. Thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate your engagement and your presence, and it has been a pleasure meeting you today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Happy
Thank you.